All right, so early in the week, first of all, we had Dan Butterly, a friend of the show. We've had Commissioner Butterly on once before. He is the Big West Commissioner. He does a weekly. It usually comes out, I believe, on Sunday or Monday. I think it's Mondays. But he put out some information basically saying that any sort of committee meetings that were to be had here over the last month have been delayed until governance. Well, then about 2 days later, or a day later, it was Tuesday, Ross Dellinger puts out, and I know this got my attention, it got Immaculate's attention, but he says, quote, quietly last week, the NCAA D1 Governance Working Group unanimously voted to recommend the new governance model to the D1 Board of Directors. He went on to say some other things there, but man, we got some nuggets, and this is right down the Wolf of Governance's alley. Yeah. So what do you think when you saw some of this news here early in the week, Immaculate?
Well, I thought it was great that you guys caught that first one from Butterly, because that didn't seem to be in the type of a place where most people would catch that. Mm-hmm. But I did find it to be very important, because kind of what it goes to show here is that there are some people who don't really like this, but it's going to go through anyways.
Yeah.
And that kind of leads into some tough conversation, which you probably don't want to go into about how that could even possibly be. But yeah, we're there. And just to top that off, when they decide to pause normal work that would be happening, I think that has to be because they're going to be creating some other new structures at the same time. There's the weighted voting, but they're going to be changing committees to be single sport specific. So I think a lot of what would be happening in these committees, like what he's talking about, it's going to be remixed up into different committees. So if they thought that this wasn't going to pass, I think it would be business as usual. But with them pausing everything, it gives it more credence to that this is going to pass. And so different people, different committees, different groups are going to be having some different responsibilities.
Well, and Dellinger said that he kind of had a little bit of a thread, and he says, this new governance model, to your point, streamlines a bureaucratic process, reducing committees and granting A4 leagues a historic level of voting power. So I think, and I know I focus on that last part, this historic level of voting power, but there's also a big piece to it, like you just said, regarding the committees, regarding the bureaucracy, regarding the processes that they've been going through that really should benefit most of D1, right? So it's pretty all encompassing here. And I appreciate you bringing that up. And just so everybody knows, August 5th is the vote. Not supposedly. I think it is actually going to happen. I mean, everything at this point right now looks like Immaculate that we're going to have this vote now next week.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. People may not realize it, but they actually already had weighted voting that was created back in 2014 when the autonomous conferences were first made, but they didn't have enough to control the vote themselves. And that's what's changing here. If they work together, as they're saying, the A4, if they work together, they can pass things on their own. If they don't all work together on something and one kind of goes away from the other three, that's when everyone else can come into play and their votes will start to matter.
Yeah, good point. I found it pretty interesting. He didn't name who this committee was, but he did say, he being Ross, said it was an 18-person committee, and he said at least one of them was an SEC president, one of them was a G6 commissioner, and one of them was an FCS athletic director. So, this committee isn't just A4 members, right? At least from what he gave us a small glimpse of who's involved, it is across everyone. And it was voted by this committee unanimously to send it to the governing board for the vote. So, yeah, I mean, I just have to give you a lot of credit here, Immaculate. You've really been talking about this for a long time. And as we're getting these nuggets, and not just talking about this like that it was coming, but also, and you've said this to us on the channel, that there's a lot of work being done kind of underground, right, behind the scenes. And I'm not trying to make that sound salacious or negative, but hey, they are setting these pins up so that they can hopefully get them knocked down. We've talked about a three-legged stool this year, governance being leg 2, congressional action being leg 3 of what really is needed to get to a new, reality, a new environment. So, Steve, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I've been basically relying on Immaculate to tell me my thoughts on Twitter with this because I don't follow it as closely, but I do think it's good that you pointed out that distinction. One part of this is the consolidation of power at the top, okay? And that's, love it or hate it, that's what's happening. The other part is the NCAA was a large, bloated, bureaucratic nightmare for many years that created so many rules and rulings and different things that got them in trouble, and made them basically hated by the public, by the students, So I think any kind of, if they, streamlining it, getting rid of some of the bureaucratic bloat of the processes, I think is good. So there can be good and bad. Going back to Immaculate, I'm interested. I want to hear more because we've seen some of the things that he pointed out on X, but I want to hear more from him on just like the significance, some of the tweets by Dellinger, how do we read between the lines? What's the significance moving forward?
A lot there to reach into. In terms of what it's going to be and why this is happening now, they tried to do this before, but in my opinion, they didn't have enough ammunition to really make it stick. And what makes this stick, this isn't going to make a lot of people happy to hear, but what makes this stick is the threat to leave the NCAA. And before, it seems like that didn't really have enough threat power. They didn't have enough. But with the House settlement situation and everything going on, it would seem like right now they have enough. And so everyone's going to go along with this now. And everyone's feeling the pain too, because, the NCAA was part of that. And they're making their payments from money that would go out in NCAA tournament credits. So everyone's feeling this now and realizing if we had did this in 2014, we might not be here right now. So I just think this is just a matter of catching up with it. There's probably some behind the scenes, as you're alluding to, agreements about what will be done and what won't be. It's probably how they're getting the votes. That's probably multiple shows that you could do to talk about those. We'll never be able to get into all that. But yeah, this thing has been going on, and probably why it was quiet is because it's so important. You don't want it to get messed up. I mean, things go out and get public, and you have media people talking about it. It gets folks riled up. And sometimes if you have a vote lined up, that could change the circumstances. So that's why I think with Dellinger coming out right now, as he has, I do believe they have the votes lined up, and this is a sure thing.
So for the average fan, the average college football fan, the layman who doesn't follow all this stuff, they pay attention when their team goes to camp, and they're more watching the games than following governance. Can you break it down for us in terms of that? For the average fan, what do they need to know? What's going to be different? Is the average fan even going to care that there's a change in governance? Will this affect them at all? Well, what's the new landscape? What your prediction on what's the new landscape look like, and how does that affect the average college sports fan?
100% everyone should care. They just don't realize why yet, but they will. What this means for whatever their college sport, but we're going to talk college football mostly. What this means for that is this is a blank slate. This is an empty canvas. With this power, the A4, as long as they're aligned, can create whatever they've wanted to create for many years. Whereas before, they'd have to do this stuff outside. CFP is a limited liability company. It's made outside of the NCAA. It operates on top of the bowl system, which operates outside of the NCAA. With this power, they no longer have to do that. You understand? They can. If I've made suggestions of what I think they'll do, but they could even have other newer, brand new, fresh ideas that I wouldn't know about. I'm just repeating the things that they wanted to do well in the past. So, if they want to expand their conference playoffs, well, right now they're limited to 1 week of postseason conference play. They can change that. If they want to have more divisions instead of just 2 in a conference, they can change that. Do they want to have a 13th week of games in the regular season instead of just 12? They can change that. Do they want to have multiple team practices of cooperative practices with 2 teams in a spring game? They can do that. They can do so much more now that the bureaucracy has kind of kept them from doing for, one political reason or another. So yeah, there's a lot, and people could come up with who knows how many other things that they could possibly do.
Well, that was perfect. I might clip what you just said there. Not that it is going to happen, but to Steve's question, why should they care? Well, it could, move to some of the things that you just said there. And I think a lot of people would probably agree with some of the things, the vast majority would agree with those, and they can't get them done right now. Maybe they can in the future. And again, that's not the only list or the only items, as you mentioned, but that was a great little piece.
Those are my 4, but
yeah,
by no means is it limited to that.
Love it. I have 2 other things that I want to bring up. We talked, we did a pre-show for those that jumped on. I know we had a few people on. Immaculate was listening in there for a little bit. Pre-show on X, and we had Will, the collegiate athletic advocate, if I'm saying that correctly. Another dweller that we got to meet in Las Vegas. But he asked about kind of all this hubbub and smoke, at least from those that are currently in or going to be in the Pac-12, about possibly getting back their A4 status. Are we in an A4 realm? Are we in an A5 realm? I think you had mentioned maybe there was something today that came out from Ross that maybe makes you sway one way or the other. Can you talk about that?
At this time, I'm kind of sitting on the fence, and it's not necessarily a comfortable position. In the past, I was always I didn't want to speak on it because of Pac folks and saying, unfortunately, I didn't think that they were going to get back in. But then we've had a couple of data points come out since they invited Texas State, which could potentially be pointing to suggest that they may have their status back because they beat the grace period. I don't know. I don't have the answers to this, but I do know that Ross Dellinger came out today, with his post, and he referred to the group of 6. So to those folks, I have to say, I don't know, but he's been the guy that they have been using to really come out and bring information to the public. Like, it used to be back in the day, there was a couple guys who were like the supposed media kings of realignment. Well, that's Dellinger now. Yeah. So when he uses that term, I tend to think somebody told him that. But in to really kind of take a position, it's, hey, this thing is next week. Let's see what the final result is. If for Pac folks who want to hold on to those other data points that they were put out and said the Autonomy 5 and that they're a part of that, I would say just hold on to it and wait till next week, but don't stake everything on that. Be ready for this thing to go either way. For sure.
Let me ask you one other thing. We did want to keep this segment to 30, so appreciate this. And sure. I'm going to switch gears just a little bit because you have been more bullish on potential congressional action than the person sitting to my left. And again, we really don't know. There is some movement, but whether or not it's going to get across the finish line, it remains to be seen. I want to ask you your opinion because you and I have had some communication offline on this or off podcasting on this. I want to know your thoughts of whatever you want to give on the news last week where the President Trump, decided to issue an executive order, for whatever reason he decided to do so. I just your opinion, not so much on the order and what it said, but the timing of it, given where everything's at right now. Do you have an opinion on pros, cons, indifferent on what have occurred there with that?
I personally, for me, the whole congressional action situation is too big to fail, in my opinion. Like it's going to happen. It's just a matter of each side's playing their public presentation. And in terms of him, I see it more like what the executive branch does is it executes what the legislative branch passes. I think he went way too soon. I don't know if just to try and help it out, or if it's just him trying to get attention, or what it is. People can take that in their own way. But that's where I see this coming into play. It's not he's one man making this happen. I think that it's already kind of done, and he's just jumping the gun and getting out orders to all of his all the agencies that are part of the executive branch. Like, this is how we're going to implement this. Because otherwise, beyond that, it doesn't make much sense to me. The timing makes very little sense at all.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. You said it more eloquently than I would have. I think it is more being out in front of it, being first, the attention, Steve mentioned attention. He does kind of enjoy attention. I would say, again, I don't want to get politics, but to each their own. But I'm with you. Like, I looked at it and I'm like, I literally texted, I may have actually group texted you guys, like, why did he do this now? Like, this isn't helping the situation. Like, take politics out of it. That does not, in my opinion, does not help the situation, Steve.
I think the name of the executive order says everything. The name of it is President Trump Saves College Sports. So, I mean, it's just, I just look at it as a politician, like Immaculate said, trying to get ahead of things, put their name on it, put their stamp on it. It's just whether or not that's helpful. And it sounds like Immaculate thinks maybe not. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
But, if it's too big to fail, then what does it matter?
Sure. Well, and also I would say, if it's too big to fail, and Immaculate kind of hit on this, and I kind of thought this too, like, it's coming.
Yeah.
Like the pins are in a line that eventually, now, was it a little early? Was it, whatever. And everybody can make their own opinion about that. But I think it also certainly leans to the side that, wow, it certainly looks like something could be coming, more so than not. Like, I don't think he just would have done that at this point, because he's been talking about it now for a couple. He had Saban in, he went golfing with Joe Schmoes and all these guys, right? And that was a little while ago. The executive orders now, of course, they got to put all that together. So I think it just makes you lean towards, for me, it makes me lean towards more that we're gonna see something happening, but you never know with politics.
Never know.
So, hey, Immaculate, anything you want to end with that we did not talk about, sir?
That's pretty much the gist of it for people who this is just kind of landing on their radar right now.
Yeah.
Just for them to understand that this isn't actually new, and it is extremely important. I know if people had to put priorities to what they think is most important going on with the business side, I think they'd probably list CFP as number one.
Yeah.
And then they'd look at, like the portal stuff and things like that. But honestly, all of that doesn't come anywhere close to being on the same level with the governance situation. And I even think that when this passes, it's another green light for Congress. Because if you remember, and I can finish with this, but if you remember, the A4 themselves went to the Senate and had a day on the Hill, as they called it. They did not take the NCAA. To me, that was one of those things that if they don't get this governance, they were making preparations like, okay, what's going to happen if we have to leave the NCAA? So that's probably the best ending, is that talks about leaving were probably pretty serious if this doesn't pass this next week's.
Well, that's a heck of a way to end it.
Yeah.
So, hey, Immaculate, no, I'm going to say it correctly. The wolf of governance here on the big mountain, setting everyone straight. Appreciate your time here this evening.
Appreciate you guys always, and talk to you again soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.